A bullet whistled past Victoria Zimmerman's ear as she dove behind an overturned wagon, her heart pounding against her ribs like a frantic prisoner. This wasn't how her journey west was supposed to end, pinned down by bandits on the outskirts of Promise Creek, Arizona Territory, 1878. "Give it up, lady," a gruff voice called. "We know you're carrying the payroll." Victoria clutched the leather satchel to her chest, dust coating her once fine traveling dress. The stagecoach lay in splinters 50 yards back, the driver dead, the other passengers scattered or worse. Only her quick thinking and quicker feet had gotten her this far. "I'd rather die than give you thieves a single cent," she shouted back, though her voice trembled. Another shot rang out, splintering wood inches from her face. Victoria flinched, pressing herself flatter against the ground. 23 years of proper Boston upbringing hadn't prepared her for this moment. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her blood run cold. This was it. The bandits were closing in, but the shots that followed weren't aimed at her. Gunfire erupted in a thunderous exchange, punctuated by shouts and the frightened whinnying of horses. Victoria dared to peek around the edge of the wagon. A lone rider on a magnificent black stallion was engaging the bandits, his revolver blazing. His movements were fluid, precise, a dance of deadly efficiency. 3 bandits were already down, the remaining 2 retreating in panic. As quickly as it had begun, it was over. The sudden silence felt deafening. "You can come out now, madam," a deep voice called. "They won't be bothering you anymore." Victoria cautiously stood, still clutching the satchel. Her rescuer dismounted in one smooth motion, and she found herself staring up at the tallest man she'd ever seen. Dusty black hat pulled low over piercing blue eyes, weathered tan skin, and a face that seemed carved from the very mountains behind him. "Thank you," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "You saved my life, Mr. Ryder Callahan," he replied, touching the brim of his hat. His gaze flickered to the satchel. "That's what they were after, I reckon." Victoria nodded, straightening her shoulders. "The mining payroll. I'm delivering it to my uncle in Promise Creek. I'm Victoria Zimmerman." A flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Judge Zimmerman's niece. We weren't expecting you until next week. I decided to arrive early, surprise my uncle." She gave a brittle laugh. "I suppose the surprise was mine instead." Ryder's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the carnage. These men knew exactly when and where to hit the stage. Someone talked. He turned back to her. "Promise Creek is still 5 miles east, not safe for you to travel alone, especially now. Are you offering to escort me, Mr. Callahan?" "I am." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "But you should know something first. I'm not welcome in Promise Creek." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "You're an outlaw." A humorless smile touched his lips. "Worse. I'm a rancher who won't sell to the mining company. Your uncle and his friends don't take kindly to that." "Then why help me?" Ryder shrugged, already leading his horse toward her. "I don't much like seeing folks gunned down, regardless of who their kin might be." Victoria studied him, this contradiction of a man dangerous yet principled. "I still need to reach Promise Creek. I'll get you there." He extended a hand to help her mount. "But don't expect me to be welcomed with open arms." Victoria placed her hand in his, feeling the calluses against her smooth skin. "Mr. Callahan, I stopped expecting things to go as planned the moment bullets started flying past my head." As he swung up behind her, his arms coming around her to take the reins, Victoria felt something shift inside her, a certainty that her life would never be the same after today. "Hold tight, Miss Zimmerman," Ryder said, his breath warm against her ear. "And keep that payroll close. We've got a long ride ahead." The stallion surged forward, and Victoria held on, the desert landscape blurring around them as they raced toward Promise Creek and whatever fate awaited them there. They rode in tense silence for the first mile, Ryder scanning the horizon with practiced vigilance. Victoria tried to ignore the solid warmth of his chest against her back, the strength in the arms that reached around her to hold the reins. "Were you expecting trouble when you came upon the stage?" she finally asked. "I wasn't expecting anything," Ryder replied. "I was tracking rustlers who have been hitting my north pasture, heard the shooting and came to investigate. Fortunate timing for me. Unfortunate for them." His tone was matter-of-fact, not boastful. Victoria twisted slightly to look at him. "You killed those men without hesitation." "They'd have killed you without hesitation." His eyes remained fixed on the trail ahead. "Out here, hesitation gets you dead. Is that the cowboy's code of justice? It's survival." Ryder adjusted his grip on the reins. "Boston's a long way from here, Miss Zimmerman. Different rules apply in the territory." Victoria fell silent, processing his words. The West had always been an abstract concept to her exciting stories in dime novels, romantic notions of freedom and adventure. The reality was harsher, more immediate. "Why did you come west?" Ryder asked, surprising her. "My parents died last winter. Influenza." The words still hurt to say aloud. "Uncle Herbert is my only remaining family. He wrote that Promise Creek was growing, that they needed educated people to help build a proper society. And the payroll. That's not a typical duty for a judge's niece." Victoria hesitated. "The bank manager in Tucson was ill. Uncle arranged for me to transport it since I was coming anyway. He said it would demonstrate my trustworthiness to the town council." Ryder made a sound that might have been a laugh. "More likely he wanted to save the fee for hiring proper guards. You don't think much of my uncle. Your uncle represents men who'd burn down homes to get what they want." The edge in his voice was unmistakable. "The mining company's been buying or forcing out every rancher and homesteader from here to the mountains. Surely there are legal means to legal." This time his laugh held no humor. "Miss Zimmerman, your uncle decides what's legal in Promise Creek." Before Victoria could respond, Ryder suddenly pulled the horse to a halt, his body tensing. "What is it?" she whispered. "Dust cloud ahead. Ryder's coming fast." He turned the stallion sharply, heading toward a nearby ridge lined with scrub brush and boulders. "Could be a search party from town, could be more bandits. Either way, we're exposed here." They reached the ridge just as 6 riders appeared on the trail below. From their vantage point, Victoria could make out the glint of badges on several chests. "It's the sheriff," she said, relief flooding her voice. "We should call down to them." Ryder's hand closed over hers, stopping her. "That's Sheriff Mills and his deputies. They work for your uncle and the mining company, not the law." "You can't possibly believe they'd harm me," Victoria protested, though uncertainty crept into her voice. "Maybe not you, but they've been looking for an excuse to put a bullet in me for months." His eyes met hers, intense and unyielding. "Those bandits knew exactly when to hit the stage, Miss Zimmerman. Someone told them." The implication hung heavy between them. Victoria shook her head. "No, my uncle wouldn't." "Maybe not," Ryder conceded, "but someone close to him might." "The payroll is the perfect cover. Steal it, blame bandits, no questions asked." Victoria watched the search party below, men she was supposed to trust, and found herself hesitating. "What do you suggest we do?" "There's a route to Promise Creek through Blackwater Canyon. Takes longer, but we won't be spotted. I can get you to the edge of town by nightfall, and then you decide who to trust." Ryder's expression softened slightly. "I'm not asking you to believe me over your own blood, Miss Zimmerman. Just be careful who you hand that satchel to." Victoria clutched the payroll tighter, feeling the weight of responsibility and doubt. Every instinct told her to ride down to the sheriff's party, to return to the safety of authority and order. But something in Ryder's eyes, a certainty born of hard experience, gave her pause. "Through the canyon, then," she decided. "But I want your word that you'll tell me everything you know about my uncle and Promise Creek before we arrive. You have it." Ryder guided the horse deeper into the cover of the ridge, "though I doubt you'll like what you hear." As they disappeared into the rugged landscape, Victoria couldn't shake the feeling that she was riding away from more than just the search party below. She was leaving behind every certainty she'd brought west with her. The path through Blackwater Canyon was treacherous narrow ledges above steep drops, loose shale that threatened to give way beneath the horse's hooves. Victoria clung to the saddle horn, trying to mask her fear as Ryder navigated the dangerous terrain with practiced ease. "How much farther?" she asked, wincing as a sharp turn brought them perilously close to the edge. "We'll reach the canyon floor soon. Easier going from there." Ryder's voice remained steady, reassuring. "Your mount's holding up well, carrying double. Does he have a name?" "Phantom." There was genuine affection in Ryder's tone. "Raised him from a colt. Smartest horse I've ever known." The conversation stalled as they negotiated a particularly narrow section of trail. When they finally reached the canyon floor, Victoria released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you," she said as Ryder helped her dismount beside a small stream, "for taking the difficult path rather than risking a confrontation. Don't thank me yet." He knelt to fill his canteen. "We're not out of danger." Victoria smoothed her dusty skirts, acutely aware of how out of place she must look in her traveling attire. "You promised to tell me about my uncle." Ryder capped the canteen and stood, his expression grave. "Herbert Zimmerman arrived in Promise Creek 3 years ago when silver was first discovered. He brought money, Eastern connections, and ambition, the kind of man who sees opportunity where others just see dirt." "That sounds like Uncle Herbert," Victoria admitted. At first, he seemed like progress. The town needed infrastructure, law, civilization. But as the mines expanded, so did his reach. Ryder's jaw tightened. "My family's ranch sits on land the mining company wants for water rights. When my father refused to sell, accidents started happening. Cattle poisoned, fences cut, fire in the south pasture. Surely that could have been." The sheriff investigated. "Found nothing." Ryder's voice hardened. 6 months ago, my father was shot returning from town. Sheriff called it a robbery gone wrong, though nothing was stolen." Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. "I'm so sorry." "Your uncle delivered the eulogy, spoke about lawlessness and the need for stronger order. The same week, he signed an ordinance allowing the mining company to divert the creek that waters our land." Ryder met her gaze steadily. "My mother died birthing me. My father was all I had." Victoria felt sick. The uncle she knew was stern but fair, a respected judge in Boston who spoke of bringing justice to the frontier. Could he truly be involved in something so corrupt? What about the other ranchers? Some sold. Some fought and lost anyway. The Wilsons, the Garcias, Old Man Thompson, all gone now. Ryder looked away. "I'm the last holdout and they're running out of patience." Victoria sank onto a nearby boulder, the leather satchel heavy in her lap. "If what you're saying is true, then the men who attacked the stage might have been sent to recover the payroll before you ever reached town," Ryder finished, "or to make sure you never arrived at all. But why would they want to harm me? Perhaps they didn't know who you were, or perhaps—" He hesitated. "Say it," Victoria demanded. "Your arrival wasn't announced publicly. Only those close to your uncle would have known you were coming early, carrying the payroll." The implication hung in the air between them. Victoria shook her head. "No, Uncle Herbert wouldn't harm his own niece." There must be another explanation. Ryder didn't press the point. We should keep moving. I'd like to reach the East Ridge before dusk. As they continued their journey, Victoria's mind raced with questions and doubts. The uncle who had written such encouraging letters, who had promised her purpose after the devastating loss of her parents, could he truly be capable of such darkness? Or was Ryder Callahan manipulating her, using her to further his own vendetta? By late afternoon, they had navigated through the canyon and begun climbing the eastern ridge that would lead them to Promise Creek. The town lay nestled in the valley below, smoke from chimneys rising lazily in the still air. From this distance, it looked peaceful, civilized, everything Victoria had hoped for when she decided to come west. "We'll approach from this side," Ryder said, pointing to a trail that wound down through scrub brush and rocky outcroppings. "Less likely to be seen that way." Victoria studied the town below. Why not simply ride in together? If you haven't broken any laws, Sheriff Mills doesn't need laws to arrest me, just your uncle's word. Ryder's expression was grim. Besides, you need to make your own judgments without me influencing things. "You've already influenced things considerably, Mr. Callahan." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "True enough. But once you're in Promise Creek, you'll hear their side, then decide." They dismounted to rest Phantom before the final descent. Victoria stretched her aching muscles, unaccustomed to long hours in the saddle. As she moved, the leather satchel slipped from her grasp, falling open as it hit the ground. Gold coins spilled onto the dirt. Ryder watched impassively as she scrambled to collect them. $12,000, he observed. Quite a responsibility for a newcomer. Victoria paused, a coin clutched in her hand. "How did you know the amount?" "The mine pays monthly. Everyone knows what the payroll runs." She continued gathering the coins, but uncertainty gnawed at her. How much did this man truly know? And could she trust him with her life? As night approached, Ryder seemed to read her thoughts. "Miss Zimmerman, if I meant you harm, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I could have taken that payroll hours ago. Why didn't you?" The question escaped before she could stop it. His blue eyes held her steadily. "Because I'm not what they say I am." He moved to help her collect the remaining coins. "And I suspect you're braver than you appear." Their hands brushed as they reached for the same coin. Victoria felt a jolt of awareness, unexpected and unsettling. For an instant, neither moved. Then Ryder pulled back, clearing his throat. "We should reach town before full dark," he said, his voice rough. As they prepared to continue their journey, Victoria made a decision. "I'd like you to come with me to see my uncle," she announced. "Whatever the truth is, I want to hear both of you speak it plainly." "That's a dangerous request." "Nevertheless, it's mine to make." Victoria straightened, channeling every ounce of her Boston upbringing. "You've risked your life to bring me this far. I'm asking you to see it through." Ryder studied her for a long moment. "Your uncle's men might shoot me on sight." "Not if you're with me." She held his gaze. "You've shown me trust, Mr. Callahan. I'm offering the same in return." The weight of her words hung between them. Finally, Ryder nodded. "As you wish, Miss Zimmerman, but if things go south, promise me you'll run. Don't look back, just run." Victoria extended her hand to seal their agreement. "I promise." As Ryder's calloused hand enveloped hers, she felt something shift between them, a bond forged in danger and uncertainty, but also in a growing mutual respect that neither had anticipated. The sun was setting as they approached the outskirts of Promise Creek, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Victoria could make out the church steeple, the larger buildings of a town in transition, half frontier settlement, half aspiring city. "We'll need to be careful now," Ryder murmured. "Follow my lead." Together, they urged Phantom forward, descending toward whatever awaited them in Promise Creek. The first buildings of Promise Creek rose around them as they entered town from the east, keeping to back alleys to avoid Main Street. Gas lamps were being lit, casting pools of yellow light that seemed to push back against the encroaching darkness. Music and laughter spilled from the Silver Dollar Saloon, while across the street, the general store was closing for the evening. "It's larger than I expected," Victoria whispered, taking in the substantial brick buildings interspersed with wooden structures. "Uncle's letters mentioned growth, but this. Silver brings people. People bring money." Ryder guided Phantom through a narrow passage between buildings. "Your uncle's house is at the north end, the big white one with columns." Victoria spotted it immediately, a stately two-story home that would have looked at home in Boston, surrounded by a wrought iron fence. Light glowed from the windows, warm and inviting. "We can't just ride up to the front door," she realized. "No, there's a service entrance at the rear through the garden." Ryder's voice was low, less visible from the street. As they approached, Victoria felt her heart pounding. What would she say to Uncle Herbert? How could she ask if he was involved in corruption in her father's own brother? They dismounted in the shadows of a large oak tree behind the house. Ryder secured Phantom, then turned to Victoria. "Last chance to reconsider," he said quietly. "I can wait here while you go in alone. Might be safer." Victoria clutched the payroll satchel, her knuckles white against the worn leather. "No, we do this together." Ryder nodded, his respect for her evident. "Stay close." They moved silently through the garden, approaching the back porch. Before they could reach it, the door opened, spilling light onto the steps. A tall man in a well-cut suit emerged, followed by another man Victoria recognized immediately. "Uncle Herbert," she breathed. Judge Herbert Zimmerman paused, peering into the darkness. "Who's there?" His hand moved toward his coat pocket. Victoria stepped into the light. "It's me, Uncle." "Victoria." "Victoria." Disbelief and relief washed over his features. "My God, child, we've been searching everywhere for you." He hurried down the steps, arms outstretched. Victoria hesitated, then moved forward to accept his embrace. Over her uncle's shoulder, she saw the second man watching them, Sheriff Mills, his badge gleaming in the lamplight. "The stagecoach was attacked," she explained as her uncle released her. "I barely escaped." "We found the wreckage this morning," Sheriff Mills said, his voice hard. "Driver dead, no sign of you, feared the worst." Herbert held her at arm's length, examining her. "Are you hurt? How did you get here? And the payroll?" Victoria patted the satchel at her side. "Safe. I had help." "Help?" Herbert's brow furrowed. "From whom?" Victoria took a deep breath. "Mr. Callahan saved me from the bandits. He brought me here safely when he could have left me to die." At Ryder's name, both men tensed. Herbert's face darkened as Ryder stepped from the shadows. "Callahan." Sheriff Mills' hand moved to his holster. "Don't," Victoria said sharply, moving to stand beside Ryder. "He saved my life. I won't have him threatened for it." Herbert's eyes narrowed. "Victoria, you don't understand. This man is dangerous. A troublemaker who's been fighting progress since the day we broke ground on the first mine." "Is that how you describe someone who refuses to be forced off their land?" Ryder's voice was calm, but Victoria could feel the tension radiating from him. "Or someone who asks questions about a father shot in the back. How dare you?" Herbert's face flushed with anger. "Victoria, come here this instant. This man is manipulating you." Victoria stood her ground. "Is it true, Uncle? Has the mining company been forcing ranchers to sell?" "Using intimidation. Perhaps even violence." Herbert's expression shifted, a calculation passing behind his eyes. "The territory is developing, Victoria. Progress requires sacrifice. Some people refuse to see the greater good." "That's not an answer," she pressed. "It's the only one you need." Sheriff Mills took a step forward. "Now hand over the payroll, Miss Zimmerman. The mining company's been waiting on those funds. Victoria clutched the satchel tighter. And the attack on the stagecoach, was that part of the greater good too? A flicker of something surprise, perhaps, or concern crossed Herbert's face. What are you implying? Only those close to you knew I was arriving early with the payroll, Victoria said, her voice steadier than she felt. Someone told those bandits exactly where to find me. This is absurd, Herbert sputtered. Callahan's filled your head with nonsense. Sheriff Mills drew his gun. Enough of this. Callahan, you're under arrest for stagecoach robbery and kidnapping. No, Victoria moved in front of Ryder. He saved me from the real robbers. If you want to arrest someone, find them. The sheriff's gun remained steady. Step aside, Miss Zimmerman. This doesn't concern you. I believe it does, Sheriff. A new voice entered the conversation as a figure emerged from the house. A woman in her 40s, elegantly dressed with sharp eyes that missed nothing. After all, the young lady is my husband's niece. Herbert turned. Veronica, go back inside. This is being handled. Is it? Veronica Zimmerman descended the steps with graceful authority. Because it appears you're threatening a young man who saved Victoria's life, while avoiding her rather pointed questions. She approached Victoria, studying her with genuine concern. Are you injured, my dear? You look exhausted. Victoria found herself warming to this unexpected ally. I'm well enough, thank you. Are you my uncle's wife? He never mentioned remarrying in his letters. A cool smile curved Veronica's lips. Did he not? How curious. We've been married for 2 years now. She turned to her husband. Herbert, I believe this conversation would be better continued inside, away from prying eyes and drawn weapons. For a moment, Herbert looked as though he might refuse. Then, with obvious reluctance, he nodded to the sheriff, who holstered his gun. Very well. Victoria, please come inside. We have much to discuss. Herbert's gaze hardened as it fell on Ryder. Callahan can go. He's delivered you safely, as he claims. His business here is done. If Mr. Callahan leaves, so do I, Victoria stated firmly. And the payroll with me. The two men exchanged glances, a silent communication that Victoria couldn't interpret but found deeply troubling. That won't be necessary, Veronica interjected smoothly. Mr. Callahan is welcome in our home. After all, we owe him our niece's life. Her tone made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. Herbert's mouth thinned to a hard line, but he nodded curtly. Fine, but just for tonight. As they moved toward the house, Victoria felt Ryder's hand brush against hers, a brief touch of reassurance that steadied her nerves. Whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. The interior of the Zimmerman home was as grand as its exterior suggested: crystal chandeliers, imported furniture, paintings in gilded frames. Victoria took it all in as they were led to a spacious parlor, noting the obvious wealth on display. Sit, please, Veronica offered, gesturing to the plush settees. I'll have cook prepare something. You must be famished after your ordeal. Before Victoria could respond, Herbert cut in. That can wait. First, the payroll needs to be secured in my safe. Victoria tightened her grip on the satchel. I was instructed to deliver it directly to the mine office tomorrow morning. I am a circuit judge and the mining company's legal representative, Herbert said impatiently. The safe in my study is the most secure location in Promise Creek. Victoria glanced at Ryder, who gave a nearly imperceptible shake of his head. I think I'll hold on to it until morning, she said firmly. After all, that was my assignment. Herbert's face darkened. Victoria, you're being unreasonable and frankly insubordinate. I am your guardian now. I'm 23, Uncle. I don't require a guardian. Victoria straightened her spine. And after today's events, I'm exercising caution. What my husband means, Veronica interjected, is that we're concerned for your safety. Carrying such a sum is dangerous, as you've already discovered." Sheriff Mills, who had been standing silently by the door, stepped forward. "Judge, with respect, I should take the payroll now. The mining company's expecting it, and there's still the matter of Callahan's involvement in all this." Ryder, who had remained watchful and silent, finally spoke. "If I'd wanted that money, Sheriff, I'd have taken it hours ago in the desert, not walked it straight to you." "Unless that was your plan all along," Mills retorted. "Get the girl to trust you, walk right in with the payroll, then disappear again." Victoria had heard enough. "Mr. Callahan killed 3 bandits who were trying to murder me. He could have left me there, taken the money, and no one would have been the wiser. Instead, he risked his life to bring me safely to Promise Creek, despite knowing he might be arrested or worse upon arrival." She turned to her uncle. "What I want to know is how those bandits knew exactly when and where to find me. Who told them I was coming early with $12,000? A heavy silence fell over the room. Herbert and the sheriff exchanged another glance. Veronica watched her husband carefully, her expression revealing nothing. "Victoria," Herbert began, his tone placating, "you've been through a terrible ordeal. You're tired, frightened, and clearly influenced by this man." He gestured dismissively toward Ryder. "Callahan has a vendetta against the mining company. He's using you." "Is he?" Victoria challenged. "Or am I finally seeing things clearly? You wrote so enthusiastically about bringing civilization and justice to Promise Creek, Uncle. But Mr. Callahan tells a different story of intimidation, of ranchers forced from their land, of his father shot in the back with no investigation." Herbert's face reddened. "Thomas Callahan was a stubborn fool who stood in the way of progress. His death was unfortunate, but so you admit it wasn't a robbery?" Ryder's voice was dangerously quiet. "After months of your sheriff insisting otherwise." Herbert realized his mistake too late. The room crackled with tension as Sheriff Mills moved his hand to his holster once more. It was Veronica who broke the impasse. "Herbert, enough." Her voice cut through the tension like a knife. "This has gone too far." "Stay out of this, Veronica," Herbert warned. "I've stayed out of it for too long." She turned to Victoria. "Your uncle is right about one thing: you are tired and need rest. As does Mr. Callahan. I suggest we all retire for the evening. The payroll can remain with you tonight, and decisions can be made in the morning with clearer heads." Victoria studied her aunt's face, trying to discern her motivations. There seemed to be genuine concern there, but also something else: determination, perhaps, or resolution. "Thank you, Mrs. Zimmerman," she finally said. "I would appreciate that." Herbert began to protest, but Veronica silenced him with a look. "It's decided. Sheriff, you may go. We'll send word in the morning." Mills hesitated, looking to Herbert, who finally gave a curt nod. With obvious reluctance, the sheriff departed, though not without a final warning glance at Ryder. "I'll show you to your rooms," Veronica said once they were alone. "Victoria, you'll take the blue guest room. Mr. Callahan, the room at the end of the hall should suit you." As they followed Veronica upstairs, Victoria couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just transpired, a power struggle she didn't fully understand, but had somehow influenced. One thing was certain: her arrival in Promise Creek had upset a delicate balance. And judging by the barely contained fury in her uncle's eyes as they left the parlor, that balance wouldn't be easily restored. Victoria couldn't sleep. Despite the comfortable bed, her mind raced with questions and doubts. The confrontation in the parlor had only confirmed her suspicions. Something was very wrong in Promise Creek, and her uncle was at the center of it. A soft knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. She slipped from bed, still fully dressed, and cracked the door open cautiously. Veronica stood in the hallway, a finger to her lips. "We need to talk," she whispered. Quietly. Victoria hesitated, then nodded, opening the door wider. Veronica slipped inside, closing it softly behind her. "We don't have much time," she said in a hushed voice. "Herbert is in his study with Maxwell Thornton, the mining company owner. They're discussing what to do about you and Callahan." Victoria clutched the payroll satchel she'd kept beside her. "What do you mean? Your arrival has complicated things." Veronica's expression was grim. "The attack on your stagecoach wasn't supposed to happen that way. You weren't supposed to survive." The blunt admission sent a chill through Victoria. "My own uncle wanted me dead." "Not initially. When he first invited you to Promise Creek, his intentions were genuine. But when the opportunity arose to use you as a courier, things changed." Veronica moved to the window, peering through the curtains at the darkened street below. "The plan was for the stage to be robbed, the money taken. You left unharmed but unable to complete the delivery. Why? What purpose would that serve? The mine is failing, Victoria. Has been for months. The last 2 payrolls have been borrowed money, not profits." Veronica turned back to face her. Herbert and Thornton needed a way to cover the shortfall without admitting to investors that the silver vein is playing out. A dramatic robbery would buy them time and insurance money. Victoria sank onto the edge of the bed. But something went wrong. The men hired were local troublemakers, not professionals. They panicked when the driver resisted, started shooting. Veronica's voice hardened. When Herbert heard what happened, he sent Sheriff Mills to clean up the mess. No survivors, no questions. "And then I appeared with Ryder Callahan," Victoria whispered, "the one man in the territory who had both reason and courage to stand against them." Veronica almost smiled. "Ironic, isn't it?" Victoria studied her aunt's face. "Why are you telling me this? Why help us?" "Because I've watched my husband change from a man of principle to a puppet of greed." Real pain flashed in Veronica's eyes. "Because the mine is poisoning the water that feeds the entire valley. Because Thomas Callahan was my friend, and I did nothing when they murdered him." She moved closer, her voice dropping even lower. "Listen carefully. Herbert plans to have Mills arrest Callahan at dawn or worse. The payroll will be taken and you'll be given a choice. Support their story or face accusations yourself." "That's insane. I'm Herbert's niece." "You're a complication, Victoria, one they can no longer afford." Veronica glanced at the door. "We don't have much time. You need to leave, both of you, tonight." Victoria's mind raced. Where would we go? How would we even get out? "There's a back staircase that leads to the kitchen. Herbert's gelding and my mare are in the stable behind the house. Take them." Veronica pressed a small key into Victoria's hand. "This opens the stable door. Wait 20 minutes, then wake Callahan and go." Victoria closed her fingers around the key. "Come with us." Veronica shook her head. "I can't, not yet. Someone needs to stay and make sure you have a head start." She moved toward the door. "There's a homestead about 15 miles north, belongs to Sarah Carter. She was Thomas Callahan's sister. She'll help you." "How can I ever repay you for this?" "Survive," Veronica said simply. "And when the time comes, remember what happened here." With that, she slipped out as quietly as she had entered, leaving Victoria alone with the weight of revelation and decision. 20 minutes felt like an eternity. Victoria packed what little she had: a change of clothes, her mother's locket, the payroll money. When the time came, she crept silently down the hall to Ryder's room and knocked softly. The door opened immediately. Ryder stood fully dressed, his gun belt already buckled around his hips. "You couldn't sleep either," Victoria whispered. "Not in the house of the man who had my father killed." His eyes narrowed when he saw her bundle. "What's happened?" Quickly, Victoria relayed her conversation with Veronica. Ryder's expression hardened with each word. I knew the mine was having troubles, but not this. He checked his revolver. Your aunt's right. We need to leave now. They moved silently through the darkened house, Victoria leading the way to the servants' staircase Veronica had described. The kitchen was empty, moonlight spilling through the windows onto scrubbed wooden counters. Outside, the night air was cool, stars brilliant in the clear sky. They crossed the garden quickly, reaching the stable without incident. Victoria's hand trembled slightly as she inserted the key into the lock. Inside, the stable was warm and fragrant with hay. 2 horses shifted in their stalls, a sleek chestnut gelding and a dappled gray mare. We'll take these 2, Ryder whispered, already moving to saddle the gelding. Phantom knows the way home. He'll follow once he's free. Victoria helped as best she could, her Boston upbringing having included only the most basic horsemanship. Within minutes, both horses were saddled and ready. "What about your horse?" she asked. Ryder moved to a rear stall where Phantom waited patiently. He opened the door, whispering something in the stallion's ear as he stroked the animal's neck. "He'll find his way to me. We've done this before." As they led the borrowed horses out into the night, Victoria cast a final glance at the grand white house. Somewhere inside, her aunt was buying them precious time, and her uncle was plotting their demise. The family she had traveled so far to join had become her greatest threat. "Ready?" Ryder asked softly, helping her mount the gray mare. Victoria settled into the saddle, the payroll secure in her saddlebag. "Which way?" "North," Ryder said, swinging onto the gelding. "To my aunt's homestead, after that." He let the thought hang unfinished between them. As they rode quietly away from Promise Creek, Victoria knew they were leaving behind more than just a town. They were abandoning the life she had imagined for herself, the security, the purpose, the connection to her past. Ahead lay only uncertainty and danger. Yet strangely, riding beside this taciturn cowboy under the vast western sky, Victoria felt more alive than she had in years. They rode hard for the first hour, keeping to shadows and ravines whenever possible. Ryder led them on a circuitous route, doubling back occasionally to check for pursuit. "Do you think they know we've gone?" Victoria asked during a brief rest to water the horses. "Not yet, but they will by morning." Ryder scanned the horizon. "Your aunt bought us valuable time." Victoria's thoughts turned to Veronica. Will she be safe? Herbert won't harm his wife. Too many questions. Ryder's expression was grim, but once he realizes what she's done. The implication hung heavy between them, another person risking everything to stand against corruption. "I still can't believe it," Victoria murmured. "My own uncle, my father's brother." Ryder's voice softened slightly. "Silver changes people. I've seen it before, men who start with principles then convince themselves that the end justifies any means. That doesn't excuse murder. No, it doesn't." Ryder mounted his horse. "We should keep moving. Still have a ways to go before sunrise." They continued north, the terrain growing more rugged as they left the valley behind. Victoria, unaccustomed to such extended riding, found muscles aching that she hadn't known existed. But she refused to complain, matching Ryder's pace without protest. Dawn was breaking as they crested a hill and spotted a small homestead nestled in a protected hollow, a sturdy cabin, a corral, several outbuildings, all surrounded by towering pines. "That's it," Ryder said. "My aunt's place." As they approached, the cabin door opened. A woman stepped onto the porch, a rifle cradled in her arms. Even at this distance, Victoria could see the family resemblance, the same striking blue eyes, the same proud bearing. "Ryder Callahan," the woman called out. "You're either bringing trouble or running from it. Which is it this time?" Ryder actually smiled, the first genuine smile Victoria had seen from him. "Both," Aunt Sarah. Definitely both. They dismounted in front of the cabin. Sarah Carter was perhaps 50, with silver-streaked dark hair and a face weathered by sun and hardship. Her sharp gaze took in Victoria's fine clothes, the exhaustion evident in both their postures. "Zimmerman's niece?" she asked, lowering her rifle. "Victoria," Ryder confirmed. "We need shelter, Aunt Sarah, just for a day or two." Sarah's expression softened. "Veronica sent word you might come. Said you'd need help." She nodded to Victoria. "Welcome to Callahan land, Miss Zimmerman. What's left of it, anyway?" Inside, the cabin was simple but comfortable handmade furniture, colorful woven rugs, shelves lined with books. Sarah busied herself preparing breakfast while Victoria washed trail dust from her face and hands. "Your aunt seems formidable," Victoria observed as Ryder returned from seeing to the horses. "Sarah Carter's outlasted 2 husbands, a Comanche raid, and 10 years of drought," he replied. "There's not much that scares her." "Not much," Sarah agreed, placing plates of eggs and biscuits before them. "But what's happening in Promise Creek concerns me plenty. Herbert Zimmerman and that mining company have gone too far." Over breakfast, they recounted everything: the stagecoach attack, their journey to Promise Creek, Veronica's revelations. Sarah listened intently, her expression growing darker. When they finished, she rose and moved to a window, staring out at her land. "Thomas knew the mine was poisoning the creek," she said quietly. "He had proof water samples, dead livestock, records of illness downstream. He was taking it to the territorial governor when they killed him." Victoria gasped. "If that's true, it's not just corruption, it's mass poisoning." "That's why they needed him silenced," Ryder said grimly. "And why they want my land. The creek headwaters are on Callahan property. Control that, control the evidence." Sarah turned back to them. "The question is, what do you plan to do now? You can't run forever." Victoria touched the saddlebag containing the payroll. "This money could help, couldn't it? $12,000 would buy supplies, legal help. It would also make you a thief in the eyes of the law," Sarah pointed out. "Herbert Zimmerman is still a federal judge. His word carries weight beyond Promise Creek." "She's right," Ryder said. "We need more than money, we need proof." Victoria thought for a moment. "My uncle keeps records of everything, always has. If there's evidence of what they've done, it would be in his study. You want to go back?" Ryder looked at her incredulously. "That's suicide." "Not necessarily," Sarah interjected thoughtfully. "Tomorrow night is the Founders' Day celebration in Promise Creek. Everyone will be at the town square, including Herbert and the sheriff. The house would be nearly empty," Victoria realized. "It's too dangerous," Ryder insisted. "They'll be watching for us." Victoria met his gaze steadily. "Mr. Callahan, we can't just hide, not with lives at stake, not with your father's murderers free to continue their crimes." "She's right, nephew," Sarah said softly. "You can't run from this fight. Thomas wouldn't have." Ryder's jaw tightened, but Victoria could see the conflict in his eyes, the desire for safety warring with the need for justice. "We'll need a plan," he finally said. "A good one." Victoria felt a surge of respect for this man who had already risked so much. "Then let's make one," she said. "Together." For the rest of the day they plotted and prepared. Sarah provided fresh clothing for Victoria, simple, practical garments that would allow her to move freely. Ryder cleaned his revolver and checked their horses. Maps were studied, timelines established, contingencies considered. As evening fell, Sarah prepared a hearty stew, insisting they would need their strength in the days ahead. The warmth of the cabin, the shared meal, the sense of purpose it created an unexpected intimacy between them. Victoria found herself watching Ryder as he discussed details with his aunt, noting the quiet authority in his manner, the intelligence behind his caution. When Sarah excused herself to check on a noise from the barn, they were left alone by the fire. "Thank you," Victoria said quietly. Ryder looked up. "For what?" "For believing me in the parlor, for not abandoning me when you could have." He studied her for a moment. "You stood by me when it would have been easier not to. Not many would have done that." "I couldn't let them harm you," Victoria admitted. "Not when you'd risked everything to help me." Something shifted in Ryder's expression, a softening, a vulnerability quickly masked. "We should get some rest." "Tomorrow will be long." Victoria nodded, but neither moved. The fire crackled between them, casting dancing shadows across their faces. "Why did you really come west, Victoria?" Ryder asked suddenly. "The truth." She considered the question, realizing she'd never fully admitted it to herself. "To find purpose, I suppose. After my parents died, Boston felt empty, like I was playing a role in someone else's life." She gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. "I certainly found more than I bargained for. Do you regret it?" Victoria thought of everything she'd experienced since the stagecoach attack, the danger, the revelations, the betrayal. But also the clarity, the sense of fighting for something that mattered, the unexpected allies. "No," she said truthfully. "I don't." Ryder held her gaze for a long moment. "You're braver than most men I know, Victoria Zimmerman." The use of her first name, spoken in that deep voice, sent an unexpected warmth through her. "As are you, Ryder Callahan." When Sarah returned, she found them still by the fire, talking quietly. She observed them silently, a knowing look in her eyes. Before announcing it was time, they all retired for the night. Victoria was shown to a small but clean bedroom, where exhaustion quickly overcame her despite the tension of the coming day. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was of Ryder's face in the firelight, and the connection she'd felt forming between them, unexpected, unplanned, but undeniably real. The Founders' Day celebration in Promise Creek was in full swing by dusk the following evening. Bunting decorated the buildings around the town square, lanterns were strung between posts, and a band played lively tunes for dancing couples. The entire population seemed to have turned out for the occasion, dressed in their finest, determined to demonstrate the town's prosperity and civilization. From their vantage point on a hill overlooking the festivities, Victoria, Ryder, and Sarah observed through a spyglass. "There's your uncle," Ryder said, passing Victoria the glass. "Center of the square, speaking with Thornton and the sheriff." Victoria found her uncle easily resplendent in a formal black suit, shaking hands and smiling broadly as befitted the town's leading citizen. Beside him stood a corpulent man she assumed was Maxwell Thornton, and the now familiar figure of Sheriff Mills. "I don't see Veronica," she noted with concern. "There," Sarah pointed. "By the refreshment table. She looks well enough." Victoria located her aunt, relieved to see no obvious signs of mistreatment. Veronica was engaged in conversation with several ladies, playing the part of gracious hostess, though even at this distance, Victoria could detect a certain tension in her posture. "The house should be empty except for servants," Sarah said. "They'll be busy preparing for the reception that follows the outdoor celebration." Their plan was simple in outline, complex in execution. Sarah would create a diversion at the celebration, a small fire, in an unoccupied building at the far end of town, drawing attention and resources away from the Zimmerman residence. Meanwhile, Ryder and Victoria would enter through the servants' entrance, search Herbert's study for incriminating documents, and escape before anyone realized what had happened. The payroll money would remain with Sarah, hidden in her saddlebags. If they succeeded, they would use it to fund their journey to the territorial capital with the evidence. If they failed, Sarah would ensure it reached the miners' families it was intended for. "It's time," Ryder said as darkness settled fully over Promise Creek. "Remember, if anything goes wrong, meet back at Shadow Creek Crossing," Victoria finished. "I remember." Sarah mounted her horse, checking the incendiary materials secured in her saddlebag. "Give me 20 minutes to get in position. When you see the fire start, that's your signal." Victoria embraced the older woman impulsively. "Be careful. You too, child." Sarah's eyes were kind but determined. "Both of you." As Sarah rode toward the east end of town, Ryder turned to Victoria. "Last chance to change your mind." "I'm not afraid," Victoria said, though her racing heart suggested otherwise. "You should be," Ryder replied bluntly. "So am I. Fear keeps you alert." He checked his revolver one final time. "But it doesn't have to stop you." Victoria nodded, acknowledging the wisdom in his words. "Then let's be afraid and do it anyway." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "That's the spirit." They mounted their horses and began the careful descent toward Promise Creek, keeping to the shadows and avoiding the main roads. The sounds of the celebration grew louder as they approached music, laughter, the occasional cheer as speeches were made. They left the horses tethered in a small grove behind the Zimmerman property. On foot, they crept toward the service entrance, Victoria leading the way through the garden she'd fled just 2 nights before. The kitchen was busy, as predicted, with servants preparing for the later reception. But the door to the main house stood propped open to allow for easier movement between rooms. "Wait," Ryder whispered as Victoria started toward it. "Look." In the distance, a flicker of orange grew against the night sky. Shouts rose from the celebration, then the clang of the fire bell. Their diversion had begun. "Now," Victoria breathed. While they're distracted, they slipped through the kitchen, the servants already rushing to windows to see the commotion. The main house was eerily quiet, most of the staff having been assigned to the celebration or kitchen duties. Herbert's study was on the first floor, a handsome room lined with law books and featuring a massive oak desk. Victoria tried the door locked, as expected. "Can you open it?" she whispered. Ryder knelt before the lock, extracting slender tools from his pocket. "Learned this from a friend who wasn't always on the right side of the law," he murmured, working the tumblers with practiced precision. The lock clicked open. They entered swiftly, closing the door behind them. Ryder lit a small lamp, keeping the flame low. "We need to be quick," Victoria said, moving toward the desk. The ledgers would be the most important financial records, mining reports. Ryder nodded, already searching the bookshelf. "Anything about water tests or land acquisitions, too." They worked methodically, acutely aware of every passing minute. Victoria found a locked drawer in the desk, which Ryder quickly opened with his tools. Inside lay a leather-bound ledger and a stack of correspondence. "This is it," she breathed, scanning the first page. 2 sets of books, one for investors, one for reality. The mine's been failing for months. Ryder joined her, examining letters from the back of the stack. "And these are from Thornton to your uncle. Listen. The Callahan problem must be resolved permanently. His water testing could ruin everything." Victoria's hand trembled as she read another document. "Here's an order authorizing Sheriff Mills to take any means necessary to secure the northern properties, dated 3 days before your father was killed." Ryder's face hardened. "That's proof of conspiracy, if not direct murder." A noise from the hallway froze them both. Footsteps approached, then passed the study door. They waited in tense silence until the sound faded. "We need to go," Ryder whispered. "Take what we've found and leave while the diversion is still working." Victoria nodded, gathering the most damning documents while Ryder extinguished the lamp. They had just reached the door when a key rattled in the lock. Ryder pulled Victoria behind the door as it swung open. Herbert Zimmerman strode in, followed closely by Sheriff Mills. "I don't care about the fire," Herbert was saying angrily. "It's probably just drunken revelry gone wrong. What matters is finding my niece and that damned Callahan before they can—" He stopped abruptly, sensing something amiss. "Someone's been in here," he said sharply, noting the disturbed papers on his desk. Mills drew his gun. "Check the windows." Herbert moved toward his desk, then froze as he saw the open drawer. "The ledgers. They've taken." In that moment, Ryder acted. He shoved the door hard, slamming it into Mills and sending the sheriff staggering. In the same motion, he drew his revolver. "Don't move," he ordered, his voice deadly calm. "Either of you." Herbert spun around, his face contorting with rage and shock. "You." Victoria stepped from behind the door, documents clutched to her chest. "It's over, Uncle. We know everything: the failing mine, the poisoned water, Thomas Callahan's murder. We have proof." Herbert's eyes darted between them, calculation replacing surprise. "Victoria, you're making a terrible mistake. Whatever this man has told you, save it," Ryder interrupted coldly. "We have your own words in writing. Orders to kill my father, plans to cover up the mine's pollution." Mills had recovered his balance but hadn't risked reaching for his dropped gun with Ryder's weapon trained on him. "You'll never make it out of Promise Creek alive," he snarled. "Maybe not," Ryder acknowledged, "but these documents will. Even if you kill us, the evidence is already on its way to the territorial governor." It was a bluff, but Herbert couldn't know that. Victoria saw uncertainty flicker in her uncle's eyes for the first time. "What do you want?" Herbert asked, his voice tight. "Justice," Victoria answered simply. "For Thomas Callahan. For the ranchers you forced out. For the people drinking poisoned water." A commotion erupted outside, shouts, the sound of running feet. The diversion fire had apparently been controlled, and attention was returning to the main part of town. "We need to go," Ryder said quietly to Victoria. "Now." Herbert saw his opportunity. "Mills," he shouted, lunging for his desk drawer. Ryder fired, the bullet embedding itself in the desk inches from Herbert's hand. The judge jerked back, his face pale. "The next one won't miss," Ryder promised. "Victoria, the window." She moved quickly, throwing open the study window that faced the garden. Outside, darkness offered cover. "You can't run forever," Herbert said, finding his voice again. "I'm a federal judge. Who will believe a cowboy and a naive girl over me?" Victoria paused at the window, turning to face her uncle one last time. "Anyone who sees these documents, anyone who tests the water, anyone with a conscience." She held his gaze steadily. "Goodbye, Uncle. I'll see you at your trial." With that, she slipped through the window. Ryder backed toward it, his gun still trained on the two men. "This isn't over, Callahan," Mills growled. "No," Ryder agreed, "but it will be soon." He disappeared through the window just as shouts erupted from the front of the house. Herbert's enraged voice rose above the commotion, ordering men to search the grounds. Ryder and Victoria ran through the darkness, the precious documents secured inside Victoria's jacket. They reached their horses without incident and mounted quickly. "The fire's out," Victoria observed, seeing people returning to the town square. "We need to move fast before they organize a proper search." Ryder nodded grimly. "Stay close." They rode hard through the back streets of Promise Creek, avoiding the main thoroughfares. Just as they reached the northern edge of town, shots rang out behind them. "Riders," Ryder called. "At least 3. Victoria glanced back to see mounted men in pursuit, the glint of badges visible even in the darkness. "Mills and his deputies, keep going," Ryder urged his mount faster. "Head for the creek crossing." They thundered north, pushing their horses to the limit. The pursuit gained ground steadily. Mills and his men knew the terrain as well as Ryder did, and their fresh horses had the advantage. The creek appeared ahead, moonlight glinting off its surface. Sarah was waiting as planned, mounted and alert, the payroll secure in her saddlebags. "Company coming," Ryder called to her. "We got what we needed, but they're right behind us." Sarah's expression hardened. "The old mine tunnel," she said decisively. "It's our only chance." Ryder nodded in understanding. Without slowing, they veered northeast, following Sarah's lead. Behind them, the deputy's shouts grew louder. "What tunnel?" Victoria asked, breathless from the hard ride. "Abandoned silver mine from the 50s, Ryder explained. "Runs through the mountain to the other side. If we can reach it, we can lose them." The terrain grew steeper, more treacherous. Victoria clung to her saddle, trusting her horse's sure-footedness as they climbed a narrow trail barely visible in the darkness. A shot rang out, the bullet whining past her ear. "They're in range," Sarah called. "Almost there." Ryder pointed ahead to a dark opening in the mountainside, partially obscured by brush and fallen rocks. They reached the mine entrance and dismounted quickly. Ryder slapped Victoria's horse on the flank, sending it running along the mountainside. Sarah did the same with hers. "They'll follow the wrong trail," she explained, leading her own mount into the tunnel. Victoria hesitated at the dark opening. "Is it safe?" "Safer than staying out here," Ryder said grimly, guiding his horse inside. The tunnel was low and narrow, forcing them to lead the remaining horses single file. Sarah produced a small lantern from her saddlebag, its meager light barely illuminating the rotting support beams and uneven floor. Behind them, shouts echoed as the pursuers discovered the abandoned horses. Orders were given, men dispatched to follow the fleeing animals. "They'll figure it out eventually," Ryder warned. "We need to keep moving." They pressed deeper into the mountain, the air growing cool and damp. Victoria tried not to think about the tons of rock above them, or the age of the timber supports that occasionally creaked ominously. After what seemed like hours but was perhaps only 30 minutes, Sarah stopped. "Listen," she whispered. In the distance, they could hear voices echoing through the tunnel. Mills and his men had discovered their ruse. "They're coming," Ryder said unnecessarily. "We need to move faster." Sarah shook her head. "They'll catch us before we reach the exit." She handed Victoria her reins and the lantern. "Take my horse. There's a fork ahead, right leads out, left dead ends in an old chamber. I'll lead them left, buy you time." "No," Victoria protested. "We won't leave you." "She's right, Aunt Sarah," Ryder said firmly. "We stay together." Sarah's expression softened. "Thomas would be proud of you, Ryder, of both of you." She pressed something into Victoria's hand, a small derringer, just in case. Before they could argue further, Sarah slipped away down the tunnel, disappearing into the darkness. "Sarah." Victoria called softly, but Ryder put a restraining hand on her arm. "She's giving us a chance," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "We can't waste it." They continued forward, hearts heavy with the knowledge of Sarah's sacrifice. Soon they reached the fork she had mentioned. From the left tunnel, they could hear Sarah's voice echoing, drawing their pursuers away. "This way," Ryder whispered, leading them to the right. The tunnel began to slope upward, the air growing fresher. Hope sparked within Victoria as she realized they were nearing the exit. Behind them, shouts of confusion erupted. Mills and his men had discovered Sarah's deception. "They'll be coming for us now," Ryder warned. "Hurry." Moonlight appeared ahead the exit. They emerged onto a rocky slope, the valley spread below them, mountains rising in the distance. Freedom was within their grasp. A shot rang out behind them. Victoria turned to see Sheriff Mills emerging from the tunnel, his face twisted with rage. "Stop right there," he shouted, his gun aimed at Ryder's back. Ryder spun, pushing Victoria behind him. "It's over, Mills. Let us go." "Not a chance." Mills advanced slowly. "You're both dead. Then I'll burn those documents and no one will ever know." Victoria felt the weight of the derringer in her pocket. With trembling fingers she withdrew it, keeping it hidden in the folds of her skirt. "Where's the old woman?" Mills demanded, looking around suspiciously. "Safe," Ryder lied. "Already gone with the evidence." Mills laughed harshly. "Nice try. Now drop your gun, Callahan, or I'll shoot the lady first." Time seemed to slow. Victoria saw Ryder's hesitation, knew he wouldn't risk her life. As his hand moved to drop his weapon, she raised the derringer and fired. The small gun made a sound like a firecracker. Mills staggered, clutching his shoulder, his own shot going wild. In that moment of surprise, Ryder lunged forward, tackling the sheriff to the ground. The men grappled briefly before Ryder delivered a decisive blow, rendering Mills unconscious. "Victoria," Ryder breathed, looking at her with new respect. "That was terrifying," she admitted, her hand still shaking. "But necessary." More shouts echoed from the tunnel. The deputies were coming. Ryder quickly bound Mills with his own belt and retrieved both their guns. "We need to go," he said urgently. "Can you ride?" Victoria nodded, her resolve strengthening. "What about your aunt? Sarah knows these mountains better than anyone. She'll find her way to us." Ryder helped Victoria mount Sarah's horse. "We'll head for the territorial capital, Santa Fe. It's our best chance." As they rode away from the mine, Victoria clutched the precious documents inside her jacket. So much had been risked and lost to obtain them. Her old life in Boston seemed a distant memory now, replaced by this harsh new reality of danger and difficult choices. Yet riding beside Ryder Callahan under the vast western sky, she felt a certainty she'd never known before. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The journey to Santa Fe was arduous, 4 days of hard riding through rugged terrain, avoiding main trails and settlements where news of their crimes might have spread. They traveled by night when possible, resting during daylight hours in hidden canyons and abandoned line shacks. Victoria surprised herself with her endurance. The pampered Boston socialite was being forged into something stronger with each passing mile. Her hands grew calloused from the reins, her fair skin tanned by the sun, her body accustomed to the rhythm of the horse beneath her. They spoke often of Sarah, hoping she had eluded capture, promising to return for her once justice was secured. But as the days passed without sign of her, a grim reality settled over them. "She knew the risks," Ryder said quietly on their third night as they sat beside a small campfire. "Sarah made her choice." "As did we," Victoria replied, touching the documents they guarded so carefully. "We can't let her sacrifice be in vain." Their relationship had evolved during their journey necessity, and shared danger breaking down barriers that might have taken months to overcome in normal circumstances. Victoria found herself studying Ryder when he wasn't looking, noting the quiet competence in everything he did, the surprising gentleness beneath his hard exterior. For his part, Ryder had stopped treating her like a fragile eastern flower. He taught her to build fires, to read tracks, to use his revolver properly. And in quiet moments, he shared stories of his childhood on the ranch, of his father's dreams for the land, of the beauty of the territory when spring turned the desert to brief, spectacular bloom. By the time they reached Santa Fe, something profound had changed between them, an unspoken understanding, a bond forged in fire. The territorial capital was larger and more developed than Victoria had expected. Adobe buildings lining proper streets, government offices, hotels, even a theater. After their time in the wilderness, it seemed almost overwhelming. They stabled their tired horses and found lodging in a modest hotel where questions weren't asked about dusty, travel-worn guests with few belongings. Victoria felt almost giddy at the prospect of a real bath, a proper bed, and food she hadn't cooked over an open flame. But first, they had business at the governor's office. Governor Lew Wallace received them with cautious interest. A former Union general and author, he had been appointed to the territory to bring order to its notorious lawlessness. The documents Victoria and Ryder presented captured his full attention. "These are serious allegations," Wallace said, examining the ledgers and correspondence. "Corruption, conspiracy, murder, environmental negligence, all orchestrated by a federal judge. We have witnesses as well," Victoria explained. "My Aunt Veronica Zimmerman can testify to the conspiracy, and Sarah Carter," her voice faltered. "If she survived," Ryder finished quietly. Governor Wallace leaned back in his chair, his expression grave. "I've heard rumors about Promise Creek for months. Silver towns often breed corruption, but this—" He tapped the documents. "This is exceptional even by territorial standards. Will you help us?" Victoria asked directly. Wallace studied them for a long moment. "Yes, but understand what you're asking. This will be a federal case against powerful men. There will be investigations, hearings, possibly trials. It could take months, even years." "We understand," Ryder said firmly. "We'll do whatever is necessary." "Then consider it begun." Wallace rose, extending his hand to each of them in turn. "I'll dispatch federal marshals to Promise Creek immediately. Judge Zimmerman and his conspirators will be taken into custody pending investigation." As they left the governor's office, a weight seemed to lift from Victoria's shoulders. The documents were now safely in official hands. Justice had been set in motion. "What now?" she asked as they walked back toward their hotel, the setting sun painting the adobe buildings in warm gold. Ryder hesitated, uncertainty crossing his features for perhaps the first time since she'd met him. "I need to return home, see what's left of the ranch, look for Sarah." "Of course," Victoria nodded, trying to mask her disappointment. She had grown accustomed to his presence, to their shared purpose. The thought of separation left her feeling strangely hollow. "You could." Ryder began, then stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. "You'll be safe here in Santa Fe until the investigation concludes." "The governor will ensure that." Victoria stopped walking, forcing him to turn and face her. "Is that what you think I want? Safety, security? Isn't it?" Ryder's blue eyes searched hers. "Victoria, you came west looking for purpose, for family, not for—" He gestured vaguely between them. "Not for a wanted cowboy with a destroyed ranch and an uncertain future," she finished for him, a smile tugging at her lips despite the seriousness of the moment. "Mr. Callahan, I believe you underestimate what I've discovered these past days." "And what's that?" "That I'm stronger than I knew. That purpose isn't found in comfortable parlors or respectable appointments." Victoria took a step closer to him. "That some connections are worth any risk." Ryder's expression softened, hope warring with caution in his gaze. "It won't be easy, returning to Promise Creek. Even with the governor's support, there will be those who stand by your uncle who resent our actions." "You shouldn't care about that," Ryder said quietly, his eyes never leaving hers. Victoria smiled, reaching up to touch his weather-roughened cheek. "That's never stopped me before." For a moment they stood suspended in time, the bustling street around them fading away. Then Ryder's hand covered hers, turning it to press a kiss to her palm. "Come home with me," he said simply. "Yes," Victoria answered, certainty filling her heart. "Home." The return to Promise Creek 3 weeks later was dramatically different from their flight. They rode at the head of a column of federal marshals, the territorial governor's authority solidly behind them. News of Herbert Zimmerman's arrest, along with Thornton and Sheriff Mills, had preceded them. The town they entered was subdued, uncertain. Many citizens torn between loyalty to the leaders who had brought prosperity and horror at the crimes now being revealed. The mining operation had been temporarily suspended pending environmental assessment. Many miners faced unemployment, though Governor Wallace had promised aid for those affected by the closure. Victoria was relieved to discover that Veronica had been unharmed after their escape. Her aunt had prudently destroyed any evidence of her assistance before Herbert realized what had happened. Now released from her husband's shadow, she revealed herself to be a formidable advocate for reform in Promise Creek. But the most joyful surprise awaited them at the Callahan Ranch. As they crested the final hill, Victoria gasped at the sight of smoke rising from the chimney of the ranch house, a house that should have been empty. "Someone's there," she said, alarm tingling through her. Ryder's face broke into the most radiant smile she'd ever seen. "Not someone," he breathed. "Sarah." They galloped the remaining distance. Before they could even dismount, the ranch house door flew open and Sarah Carter emerged, thinner and more weathered than before, but very much alive. "Took you long enough," she called, her eyes suspiciously bright as Ryder swept her into a crushing embrace. "How?" he demanded, holding her at arm's length to assure himself she was real. "We thought that Mills and his boys would catch an old mountain woman in her own territory," Sarah scoffed. "I led them on a merry chase through those tunnels until they gave up. By the time I got out, you two were long gone and the town was in an uproar." "Why didn't you follow us to Santa Fe?" Victoria asked, embracing Sarah in turn. "Someone had to keep an eye on this place," Sarah replied simply. "And on Promise Creek. Been watching and waiting, sending reports to the governor when I could. Home." The word had never meant much to Victoria before, merely a place of residence, a physical structure. But as they settled into the Callahan Ranch over the following weeks, she began to understand its deeper meaning. Home was Sarah teaching her to bake bread in the stone oven, flour dusting both their aprons as they laughed over Victoria's first misshapen loaves. Home was helping Ryder mend fences, her soft hands growing steadier with each nail hammered. Home was sitting on the porch in the evening, watching the sunset paint the mountains while Ryder played his father's old guitar. The legal proceedings moved forward in Santa Fe. Victoria and Ryder traveled there several times to provide testimony. Herbert Zimmerman, facing overwhelming evidence of his crimes, eventually confessed in exchange for leniency. Maxwell Thornton was less fortunate, receiving a substantial sentence for his role in Thomas Callahan's murder and the environmental damage caused by the mine. Promise Creek itself was changing. With the corrupt leadership removed, new voices emerged, ranchers and merchants who had been silenced before, ordinary citizens seeking a more balanced future for the town. Veronica Zimmerman, surprisingly, became a leader in these efforts, using her husband's forfeited assets to establish a fund for those harmed by the mining company's actions. 6 months after their return, on a perfect spring day with wildflowers carpeting the range, Ryder asked Victoria to walk with him to his favorite spot on the property, a high meadow overlooking the valley, where the creek began its journey down the mountainside. "My father used to bring me here," he told her, helping her navigate a rocky section of the trail. "Said you could see the future from this vantage point." The view was indeed spectacular: miles of rolling grassland, distant mountains, the small but growing cluster of buildings that was Promise Creek. But more beautiful to Victoria was the land immediately around them, Callahan Land, now beginning to recover from years of struggle. Ryder took her hands in his expression more vulnerable than she had ever seen it. "I'm not a man of many words, Victoria, never have been. You don't need them," she said softly. "Not with me." He smiled, the smile that still made her heart race after all these months. I do need them for this. He took a deep breath. I love you. Have since that first day, I think, when you stood up to your uncle and the sheriff without flinching. You're the bravest, strongest woman I've ever known. Victoria felt tears forming in her eyes. Ryder. I can't offer you Boston society or fine parlors, he continued. Just this land, this life, it won't always be easy. I don't want easy, Victoria said, stepping closer to him. I want real, I want you. Ryder reached into his pocket and withdrew a simple gold band. Then marry me. Build a life here with me. Have children who will know this land, love it as we do. Victoria's answer was in her kiss, fierce, certain, full of promise. When they finally parted, breathless, she whispered, yes. 1,000 times yes. They were married 2 weeks later in the meadow where he had proposed. Sarah officiated, having been granted temporary authority by the territorial governor himself, who attended along with a small gathering of new friends and allies from Promise Creek. Veronica Zimmerman stood as Victoria's witness, their relationship having evolved into genuine friendship despite the painful history between them. He would have been a good man once, Veronica had told Victoria quietly the night before the wedding, before greed and power consumed him. I see in you what Herbert could have been: principled, compassionate, strong. And I see in you what I hope to become, Victoria had replied. A woman who finds her own path, no matter how difficult. Now, as they exchanged vows beneath the vast blue sky, Victoria felt the rightness of every choice, every risk that had brought her to this moment. The journey had been dangerous, the cost high, but the reward: this man, this land. This life was beyond anything she could have imagined when she boarded that stagecoach months ago. As Ryder slipped the gold band onto her finger, he whispered words meant only for her. Thank you for never stopping, even when you should have. Victoria smiled through happy tears. I never will. 5 years later, Victoria Callahan stood on the porch of the expanded ranch house, watching her husband and 3-year-old son Thomas returning from their morning ride. The boy sat proudly in front of his father on Phantom's son, Shadow, his small hands gripping the saddle horn, his face split in a wide grin that matched Ryder's exactly. Behind her, their infant daughter Sarah slept peacefully in the cradle Ryder had carved during the winter months. Inside, the aroma of fresh bread filled the kitchen where Victoria had been teaching young Mary Garcia, daughter of their foreman, to read English while the dough rose. The Callahan Ranch had prospered since those tumultuous days 5 years ago. With the poisonous mining operation closed and new, safer methods introduced under strict oversight, the creek ran clear again. Cattle grazed the expanding pastures, and the orchards Victoria had insisted on planting were beginning to bear fruit. Promise Creek, too, had found a new balance, still a mining town, but one where ranchers and merchants had equal voice, where law meant justice rather than corruption. Veronica served on the town council now, her natural leadership finally finding proper expression. As for Sarah Carter, she had her own cabin on the property, though she spent more time in the main house than out of it. At 60, she showed no signs of slowing down, running the household with cheerful efficiency and spoiling her grand niece and nephew shamelessly. Mama. Thomas called, waving frantically as he spotted her. Pa showed me the new calves. Victoria waved back, her heart full. This was the purpose she had sought, not in Boston drawing rooms or even in her uncle's grand plans for civilization, but here in this wild, beautiful country, with the family they had built together. Ryder lifted Thomas from the saddle and set him down. The boy ran toward the house, eager to share his adventures. Ryder followed more slowly, pausing to unsaddle Shadow before joining Victoria on the porch. "He's a natural horseman," Ryder said proudly as Thomas disappeared inside, likely in search of his beloved Aunt Sarah. "Takes after his mother." Victoria laughed. "Hardly. I still remember my first days here, how sore I was after riding. You never complained." Ryder pulled her into his arms, his blue eyes as intense as the day they'd met. "Not once. I had more important things on my mind," she teased, "like staying alive. And now—" His hands rested at her waist, familiar and still thrilling after all this time. Victoria looked past him to the land they had fought for, to the home they had built, to the future spreading before them as vast and promising as the territory itself. "Now I have everything," she said simply. "Everything that matters." As Ryder's lips met hers, Victoria Zimmerman Callahan knew with absolute certainty that she had found her true home not in a place, but in the love they had forged together against all odds, in the wild heart of the West.